All right, well, up first today we have Stephen with a brand new topic on the show. Stephen wrote in and said, have you examined the world in which you live? Do you believe you are living on a spinning sphere because someone told you, or do you know from personal experience?
Hello, hello, Stephen. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Stefan?
Well, thanks. I'm well. So, I wondered if you could expand upon this in a non-spherical fashion.
Well, recently, if you've seen it or not, there's a growing group of people who are doing experiments and coming forward and stating that the Earth is a flat and motionless plane.
That's the expansion.
Well, basically.
Okay, and so it's it's motionless and it's flat. And do they have any idea how thick it is?
That's an interesting question, but no, like the Russians have dug about 8 miles deep, and that's as deep as anyone has ever been.
Right. And where's the center of gravity? And look, I'm as fine with unusual questions as the next guy. I'm just sort of trying to wrap my head around it again in a non-spherical fashion. Um, and where's the center of gravity in this on this flat plane?
Well, in our motionless plane, there is no need for gravity. We have electromagnetism, attraction between forces that attract to one another.
So is it that we are magnetically attracted to the Earth, and we're magnets not? Doesn't gravity is not part of the equation, right?
Yeah, it's an electromagnetic universe, not a gravitational universe.
Oh, okay. So now, do we orbit the sun?
No, the sun, stars, and moon orbit us.
Okay, and Mars, of course, orbits us. So it's
Yeah,
Earth-centered solar system, and the Earth is like flat. Is it round and flat like a dinner plate?
yes, it is. It is a circle around the North Pole, around surrounded by Antarctica, like a pizza dish.
So Antarctica is like Saturn's rings around the flat thing, right? That's the very edge?
Yeah, Antarctica is the edge of the world.
Right, okay. And so when people believe that they're flying around the world, what happens?
You can fly around a circle.
But if they say that they're heading in one direction relative to magnetic north, if
Yes,
they're continuing to go east, and then they end up back where they started?
yes. East and west is only relative to magnetic north. Compasses only point north.
Oh, so they're flying not um, around the world, but in a circle around the North Pole, which is at the center of the flat Earth.
Yes.
Okay. And so this, of course, requires some challenging reorganization of our spatial orientation, which,
Uh-huh.
I'm fine with. I mean, I'm asking people to reimagine society without a state and ethics without a deity and so on. So,
I
again,
certainly
I am fine. I'm sorry?
I certainly agree with you on all the um, anarchist qualities of what you've been talking about for a long time.
Yeah, that may not seem like a ringing endorsement to some of the listeners, but that's as it may be. So, why is there a deity involved in this formulation?
Well, to me, I don't really ascribe to any religion in particular, but after finding out what I know now, I have come from being an atheist to believing in a higher power.
It would be pretty tough to maintain that the Earth is the center of the universe, everything revolves around the Earth, and for there to be no deity. That would
Yeah,
be kind of tough, right? That would be like a weird coincidence. You know,
yeah,
of the entire infinity of 100 billion galaxies, they all revolve around the Earth, and the Earth has a distinctive shape relative to the rest of the universe, at least because, generally matter that is more than a couple of 100 miles across tends to coalesce, as you know, into a sphere. And gravity has its arguments. The pro-gravity proponents of the case have this argument that says, well, since mass wants to find its closest proximity to the center of mass, you end up with a sphere, which is where we see the rest of the planets in the solar system, the sun itself, the moons, at least the moons at Ceres and Phobos around Mars are pretty small. But the moons that we can see that are of any reasonable size, sort of above asteroid size, tend to be spheres, right? So we have, as far as we can tell, according to this hypothesis, it's a unique position to be the only flat rather than spherical large mass object in the universe. Is that fair to say?
Well, in our model, we don't really we don't believe in things that we can't see and verify for ourselves. Like we don't really believe that anything that NASA says, for one matter.
You don't believe anything that NASA says.
No, we only believe things that we can
So
verify.
they might not even be called NASA.
Well, they were started with Nazis from Operation Paperclip, Warner von Braun and other Nazis.
Okay, before we go to the National Socialist connection, there is a uniqueness in this cosmology. There's a uniqueness to the world, and that the world is flat and round, like a dinner plate, rather than spherical. Is it your contention that the other celestial bodies are not spherical?
Well, the celestial bodies are like in question right now. Like if you take a high zoom camera and you zoom in on Venus, like somebody has recently, it certainly doesn't look like what you'll see from NASA, for one matter.
I mean, I've had a look at Venus when I was younger. I bought a telescope when I worked, and it did appear to have little crescents, the way that the moon did, but of course much smaller.
Yeah, telescopes are curved. The lens is curved, like convex.
Well, except that, of course, it correlates with what we see with the moon, that the moon has crescents that would indicate a spherical reality. And that accords with what we see with the telescope. So the curve of the telescope isn't fundamentally affecting the way that the moon looks to us, right?
The moon
And listen,
is.
I'm sorry about, I know, because whenever I put forward anarchy, and these are probably objections that have been examined, and at least some response in this cosmology has been replied to, because, I don't want to be the guy who's saying, well, what about the roads, when it comes to a voluntary society. So I appreciate your patience when I just sort of put forward my natural responses to it.
Yeah, there's no question that is wrong to be asking. It's the whole world. It's a lot of investigation that it takes.
Okay, so if you say that it's the curvature of the telescope lens that is causing the apparent crescent of Venus, then why doesn't the same effect happen with the moon? Because when I look at the moon through the naked eye, then I look at it through a telescope, as I did recently with my daughter, there's no distortion that's particularly visible. And also when I look at things fairly far away through a telescope, they don't appear to be distorted. So why would a distortion be introduced when looking at Venus?
Well, can I get to the moon first?
Sure.
The moon is a very interesting and mysterious thing. They say that you can only see one side of the moon because it is constantly spinning so perfectly that it only faces us in one direction.
Right.
And if you assume that what they're saying is correct about the moon, about the reflection of the sun, if you try and cast a light on a sphere, there will be a hot spot. And when you look at the moon is equally illuminated from top to bottom on a full moon.
Well, yeah, but that's because the sun is 93 million miles away. It's not a flashlight pointed, 4 inches from an orange, right? So there's not going to be a hot spot if the light is that diffused, is it?
On our model, the sun is about 3,000 miles up, and we do have a lot of ways to confirm this.
And is that right that it's 32 miles across?
Yeah.
Instead of some people say, we'll call them the scientists, say that it's 840,000 miles across, but according to this cosmology, it's 32 miles across and only a few thousand miles away.
Yeah, the scientists throughout time have constantly changed their numbers. Like the distance to the sun has changed dramatically to fit their model, not to measure what it is in reality.
What is it? I mean, from when I was a kid, it's been 93 million miles, or 8 light minutes. Where has it changed from?
A long time ago. And many people have theorized the distance and so on. But if you use geometry on Earth, we can measure the distance to the sun using trigonometry.
And it's a few thousand miles away. So the sun is closer than Australia.
Australia. Like up, yeah.
from Canada, right?
Yeah.
So horizontally, uh, sorry. So horizontally, across the flat dinner plate, Australia is further away than the sun.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So, but
When the
let
sun is
me.
spinning around and then goes round to the other side of the Earth, is that right? Oh no, the sun
Yeah.
spins. Is it like a dangly ball from a pole that it spins around? Because it can't go around the other side of the Earth, right? Because when you phone someone in Hong Kong and
Mhm.
it's dark where you are and it's nighttime where you are, it's light in Hong Kong, which would, to me, do something to support the sphere hypothesis.
Well,
Um, Sorry, go ahead.
there's a lot of different variations in time zones throughout the year. Like Alaska will have much warmer temperatures overall than Antarctica, even though with the supposed tilt, it should be facing the sun. And Antarctica has, temperatures of under like 100 degrees when Alaska is much,
Well, hang on.
much
Sorry,
warmer.
I don't want to get into temperature just yet. I'm trying to sort of picture. So I'm on a flat dinner
Uh-huh.
plate, and I'm up. Let's say I've got ham and eggs and bacon in a smiley face, and I'm up around sort of the top left yolk ball, eyeball, and it's nighttime there. Where is the sun in this cosmology? It can't be anywhere above me, otherwise I'd still be able to see it, right?
Well, you can't see forever, and light doesn't travel forever. That's something that they'll tell you that, you can see light from stars trillions of miles away.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure you're answering the question. So if I'm where I am and it's nighttime and I'm on a flat dinner plate, where is the sun? Is it on the other side of the dinner plate?
Yes.
So then there must be people on the other side of the dinner plate because, like I've done calls, interviews with people in Hong Kong, and, it's nighttime here and I can see the sun like right over their shoulder in real time. So is it the case that there are people at the top of the dinner plate and the bottom?
No, it is a flat plane, and the sun circles from Capricorn to Cancer in the northern hemisphere. Capricorn is the southern hemisphere throughout the year. That's what creates the seasons.
No, but I'm not talking about the seasons. I'm talking about night and day.
Mm.
So when it's nighttime, where I'm outside, like in August, I went to go and see the meteor shower with my daughter. And so when I'm outside, I'm looking up at the stars. If the world is flat and people in Australia, it's noon, let's say. So
Uh-huh.
it's midnight for me and it's noon in Australia. Where is Australia on? It can't be on my side of the flat because otherwise I'd still see the sun or at least significant portions of daylight, right?
Yeah. Have you seen a
So is the sun flipped around to the other side of the plate?
yeah, it's just on the other side. It circles around.
So the people in Australia are on the other side of like they're on the bottom of the dinner plate.
Uh-huh. Have you ever seen a map, the UN logo?
Yes.
That is our map, the equidistant map. It's basically the globe flattened.
No, I understand that, but you're still I'm still not. When it's nighttime, where I am in Canada, the spherical model, where the Earth is rotating on its axis and then rotating in orbit around the sun, explains that when it's nighttime for me, when I'm facing away from the sun, it's daytime in Australia, which is facing towards the sun, and vice versa. I don't understand how the flat model takes that into account.
Well, when it's only 3,000 miles up and light doesn't travel forever, it is like a localized spotlight that travels around the world.
But if it's flat and it doesn't go to the other side of the dinner plate, then it would just be low on the horizon for me, right? It could be further away, but it wouldn't be pitch dark, right?
No, and there's a lot to support what I'm saying. Like, if it were as they say, it would be an equal light that goes all the way around. It wouldn't be as it is.
I'm not sure what that means.
Well, like in their videos, they'll show the light on the horizon ending equally all the way around the planet, but the light from the sun is localized when it goes away.
Well, when I watch a sunset, the light is localized to where the sun is going down, to use the colloquial
Mhm.
way of putting it.
Yeah, it is perspective, viewpoint, and atmospheric density, and the limit of how far you can see, the vanishing point.
Okay, I don't know what that means, but what I can ask then, if we look at the magnetic model of why we stick to the ground, it's because of magnetics, right?
Yeah.
And do magnetics have a very similar, I'm no physicist, obviously, right? But does magnetics have a similar attraction as the theory of gravitation? Because the theory of gravitation, obviously, as you know, doesn't work with the flat Earth, right?
Yeah, we do not accept the theory of gravity because it was basically thought up by this guy named Cavendish back in the 1700s using an experiment hanging lead weights in a shed. He said that he could gain the gravitational constant that way, weighing the Earth and the Sun and all kinds of other things. But that experiment cannot be reproduced today.
Well, I would imagine that there's quite a lot of experiments from the 17th century that can't be reproduced today because it's a couple of hundred years later.
Yeah, but that's the
And
basis for their equations that they still use today.
well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, I guess you'd say that they haven't gone to the moon or they haven't sent probes past
No.
Jupiter, and that's all CGI. It's all made up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Look, I have
all a
this
hoax. Okay. Yeah, because I mean, to
Pioneer
me,
10.
if you can basically send a tiny probe from one planet, billions of miles to past Pluto, that's a pretty good validation of the theory. But I guess the response to that is that that stuff's all faked, right?
I mean, like, how are they sending messages back and forth that far? It doesn't really seem plausible to me. Like, Pioneer 10 was a probe that they said was sent to Jupiter through the asteroid belt, launched on March 3rd, 1972. It was said to have arrived at its destination over 365 million miles away in only 20 months, bringing us images of Jupiter that could have easily been faked.
Okay. So, of course, another way that people think that the Earth is a sphere, I guess you'd say it's more flat, like a dinner plate, is of course when when the Earth is between the sun and the moon, we see the curved shadow of the Earth against the moon's surface moving across it, right?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on the subject, but it does have something to do with an electromagnetic vortex that moves in between. Like, I've just heard of this yesterday. I've been researching this topic for about 9 months, and I learn new things every day. I'm by no means an expert. I just, I was trying to make contact with you because I do admire a lot of what you do.
Okay, so there may be an answer at that. We don't have it. And wouldn't it be possible, of course, to see the edge, right?
Yes, but
Because
like,
you say you don't believe things that you can't see or have no visual evidence of. Do you have any photos of the edge
here's the
of the world?
here's the thing. There's a thing called the Antarctic Treaty. The Antarctica is actually guarded by every country around the world.
I've seen documentaries from there.
Yeah, you're not allowed to go there. And when they have people go there for a tour, you only go to like a pinnacle outside of Southern America. There are no flights crossing Antarctica. There are no circumnavigations. You can circumnavigate east and west, but you cannot circumnavigate north and south.
So nobody flies over Antarctica and sees the edge, right?
No. Like Operation High Jump, Operation Deep Freeze, and Operation Fishbowl are also operations that were carried out by Admiral Byrd after World War II that went into Antarctica to explore. And there's a documentary of him talking about all of the things down there.
But you have no proof of the edge, right?
We would love to go down there, but we're not allowed to.
You have no proof of the edge, right?
No.
Okay, I mean, that's important, right? I mean, because so it remains a hypothesis in that there's no proof.
Yeah, just like, the globe.
I'm sorry?
Just like the globe remains a theory.
Let's just say that the elaborateness of the deception is something that is a little tricky for outsiders to accept.
Well,
Let me ask you this then. So, of course, if you just jump into the sphere model for a second, there are constellations that are visible in the northern hemisphere that are not visible in the southern hemisphere, and so on. And they tend to tilt around a little bit depending upon the seasons, right?
yeah.
And so, and that, as far as I understand it, the visibility or invisibility of the constellations accords with a spherical model of the Earth rather than a flat model of the Earth where you'd be able to see a lot more constellations because you're all pointing in the same direction, right?
Well, that is an interesting point. But the thing is, on a world that is spinning 1,000 miles an hour, spinning around the sun, spinning around the universe, which is going,
Wait. Sorry. Do you mean the current model, right?
yeah,
Like the
the
sphere.
globular model.
Okay.
So if that's happening, we would be able to see something far different in the stars than what we do now. What we do now see is people from Capricorn are able to see the northern pole star, Polaris, where they should not be able to. Polaris does not move. It only moves in a very small circle, and the rest of the stars rotate around it.
Wait. You're saying according to the current model, like the globular model, the stars rotate around Polaris?
Everything is the same on both models. They just make it so that it works. I'm not arguing that it works on the globular model, but I'm saying that there is no curvature. There is no proof. On a globe that is 25,000 miles in circumference, there should be a curvature of 8 inches per mile squared, and we have measured it. There is no curvature. Like, people will say that Kansas is as flat as a pancake, or the Bolivian salt flats you can see for basically 100 miles. There is no curvature. Like, if, you can say that Kansas is flat, but where's the extra curve to make up for the flatness of Kansas or the Bolivian salt flats?
Are you saying so like you shoot a laser and according to the globular model of the world should fall away from the laser a tiny bit, of course, every certain amount of distance because it is a sphere, right?
Yeah, I'll give you for the first like 5 miles would be 16 feet of curvature, 6 miles, 24 feet, 7 miles, 32 feet, 8 miles, 42 feet, and 100 miles, 6,666 feet, and exponentially growing because of the nature of a ball.
And you're saying so if you shoot a laser, I guess, I don't know, would be a perfectly calm ocean or something. If you shoot a laser, then the laser remains a constant distance from the water, which would seem to indicate that it's not a sphere. Is that right?
Jeranism has done a test on this. He actually has done a 4-mile laser test across an ocean, showing that, like, he pointed a laser at this board, like right on the water, a white board. He pointed the laser on the water, had someone on the other side of the ocean, 4 miles away, and then he could look at the laser, and there is no curvature. There should have been 10 feet of curvature. It should have been 10 feet below the curvature. And this is on video. I sent you the video a long time ago.
And so when I went very high altitude when I was 6, and then again when I was 16, flying from England to Africa, the curvature that I saw, would that be just something that I expected to see and my sort of eyes made it look that way?
All fuselage windows have a curvature to them. At 30,000 feet, you would not be able to see a curvature even if it was a globe of 25,000 miles in circumference. You would only be able to see the curvature if you were above 100,000 miles in circumference, or 100,000 miles, or 100,000 miles up.
100,000 miles up is what you'd need to see any kind of curve?
Yes.
But you measure this in four miles, and that's valid?
Well, to see the horizontal curve, yes, but to see a curve going away from you, it should be at 4 miles, it should be 10 feet of curvature.
And what about the argument that's been made for thousands of years, which is that when you see a ship sailing away from a shore, that you see the hull disappear before you see the top of the mast disappear?
Yeah, we have videos of this now too. When you are not able to see the boat with your naked eye, you can take a telescope or a zoom, and you can see the entire boat from top to bottom. It's just your vanishing point as far as you can see.
So it's a trick of the eye? Is that a mirage thing or a trick of the naked eye?
Well, you can't see forever.
I'm certainly not going to dispute that, especially
Yeah.
over 40.
Yeah, it's just atmospheric density. Like when we're at the bottom, like sea level, It's especially dense. The higher you go, the further you can see because air gets lighter.
Right. Now, the retrograde motion of Mars, of course, was one of the big challenges to the ancient Ptolemaic system, which is that when you observe Mars, there's times where it's going sort of left to right, say, across the sky, and then at times it sort of goes backwards and then goes forwards again. And this, of course, drove the ancient, Earth-centered model of the solar system people nuts because they couldn't really explain it. Now, when you put the sun at the center of the solar system, because Earth has a faster orbit, being closer to the sun in general, has a faster orbit and a shorter year than Mars, there are times when it's accelerating past the sun, and that makes Mars, from the vantage point of Earth, appear to be moving backwards and then moving forwards. And how is that explained in the flat Earth-centered model of the solar system?
Well, I'll theorize here, but I'm pretty sure other people would be able to answer this better than I can. But let me give you an example. Like the moon, as viewed from the northern hemisphere as opposed to the southern hemisphere, looks upside down because it's going in between the two hemispheres. So that could be the difference. Like they say that the stars go in the other direction in the southern hemisphere too, but if you turn around and look the other direction, they're coming from the other direction. It's just a perspective.
And the backwards Australian toilets, the flushing backwards of the toilets, how's that explained?
That is a just because of how they're made.
No. No, you can take a North American toilet and it will flush backwards. The rotation will be different. It's not the way it's made.
Or you could say that it's the Coriolis effect is caused by the sun moving in between the northern and southern hemispheres. Because so if you have it's like the wake of a boat. So if you have a boat going along, the wakes go in different directions. That's what causes the Coriolis effect, electromagnetic energy from the sun.
Now, if I'm sticking to the ground because of magnetism and I'm not made of metal, how does that work? Is this a magnetism that also strongly affects things that are non-metallic?
In your atoms and electrons.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that I stick to a giant magnet in the way that a piece of metal does.
Like I've said, I'm not an expert. I don't think anyone is. We're just learning. I've been at this.
Well, no, but I think if you say that we stick to the ground because of magnetism, but magnetism primarily affects metal and we're not metal, that seems like a fairly big stumbling block to be addressed. Because then what you have to do is you have to say, well, there's a special kind of magnetism that affects everything that's not made of metal plus metal, and then that just sounds like another way of saying gravity.
Well, atoms have electrons that have attraction to one another.
Yes, of course, but I can still hold a magnet up to my hand and it doesn't stick. It just falls away, right?
Yeah. Like the theory of gravity is basically there so you won't go flying off of the spinning ball, from centrifugal force.
I don't think that's how science works. Like, I don't think you say, well, we have this theory so you don't go flying off. Are you saying that you'd have to explain why people stick to something that's spinning round and round, and without gravity we'd all just fly off into space, as would the atmosphere? How does the atmosphere stay on the Earth?
Well,
in the flat model,
there are two.
Are the clouds magnetically attracted to the Earth as well?
There are two theories, like either the infinite plane model, which some people believe, but most people believe that it's a dome.
Oh, like a Stephen King dome over a town kind of thing?
Like a Truman Show type enclosure, yes.
Oh, okay. So it's like that medieval woodcutting of the guy sort of peering through the edge of the dome and looking at the world beyond the world kind of thing?
I guess you could say that.
Okay. And how high is the dome?
Let's see. Well, people, I sent you a video of an amateur rocket going up 73 miles and then hitting. If we're talking about the dome model, I would imagine that it would be higher in some places and lower in others, like lower in the southern hemisphere than in the northern hemisphere.
And do you have any idea what it's made of? I assume it's clear, of course, because the sun has to shine through it. The sun is not under the dome, right?
There's some people who think that it's made of sapphire. There's some people that think the sun is above the dome. There's some people that think it's in it.
Oh, the sun is in the dome.
These are all theories.
I don't know whether I'd quite call them theories as yet. Conjectures, possibly. Okay. And I'm just curious why this is an important problem to work on.
Because when you're on a spinning globe, you're the small part of the universe. You're not the universe. You're only one very small part. You're one sun. It's not the sun. It's not the world. When you're an insignificant part of the world, it seem like makes it seem like
You're insignificant, right?
yeah,
Sorry, Mike just told me that the toilet thing is a myth, but hurricanes rotate the opposite direction in
yes.
the two
Like and,
hemispheres.
and like I was
The
saying,
reason being that sometimes my bowel movements are so strong that I often get toilet flushes and hurricanes confused for obvious reasons that my family is always very excited about. So there's a psychological preference that you have for being in the middle of a sort of Truman Show constructed universe that is built with you at the center and as the most important element. Is that right?
well, I haven't seen any proof, from anyone other than NASA saying otherwise. So, it's just what we're working with.
Well, no, it's not just NASA. I mean, trust me, people thought that the Earth was a sphere long before NASA came along. I mean, it would be thousands and thousands of years ago, as you know, where they did that experiment where they put the two sticks in the ground,
Yes.
2,000 kilometers apart or something like that, and found that they had differently pointing shadows at the same time of day, and they were actually able to calculate the diameter of the Earth, circumference of the Earth, well, very accurately.
That was
And
what's his name?
so,
I can't really pronounce his name. But he supposedly discovered the tilt of the Earth and the circumference and the distance to the sun. But all of his measurements and work was destroyed in a fire, so there's no way to confirm what he did. But the
well,
stick
no, they can reproduce. No, they can reproduce those experiments, and those experiments remain the
the,
same
the stick thing is
today.
explained by the sun moving over. You know,
Well, I don't know that it's explained. There's an alternative explanation which radically alters the size, dimension, proximity, relationship, ratio, and movement of everything in the universe and creates a singular exception for the shape of everything in the universe, creates an entire parallel theory of attraction called electromagnetics that doesn't require metal and dispenses with the law of gravity and explains away a whole bunch of phenomenon like the Earth looking round when it goes up against the moon, like the difference in the constellations between north and south, and so on. It creates an entirely different cosmology that Occam's razor, like of any two explanations, a
yes.
simple one is usually the best. Occam's razor would lend you to discard fundamentally because it's too
Well,
complicated and
what's
it
what's
doesn't
more
explain enough.
what's more simple? That we're spinning on our axis and tilted and spinning around the sun and spinning around the universe and all that, or just we're a fixed and motionless plane. I mean, have you ever felt a spin or a motion?
Well, no, but I mean, the laws of inertia would explain that, right? That when you move with something, I mean, that's why astronauts float, because they're moving with something.
Well, let
And
me.
so if you are moving with something, then you will not really experience that motion any more than you feel, if you're sitting inside a train, you can doze off. Whereas if you were strapped to the top of the train, it might be a little bit more difficult because you'd have more of a sense of motion.
Let me give
So
you
I think
a
the laws of inertia do explain, I think, why we don't feel such a sense of motion.
Let me give you an analogy. Have you ever been in the ocean for a very long time, or been on a trampoline jumping around for a really long time, and then when you get off, you can still feel the motion for hours?
I think I can understand what you mean. And what is that? What does that establish?
Let's say you're spinning, like they say on the globular model, at 1,000 miles an hour on the equator. If you get into a plane and then fly in the opposite direction, would you not feel the spin?
No, because you're inside the plane and you're moving with the plane and the air is moving with the plane.
Well, here's the thing. North or east and west flights are about the same time. So when you're flying against the spin of the Earth, you should be getting to your destination at 1,500 miles an hour instead of just 500 miles an hour, as opposed to flying with the spin going 500 miles an hour in your direction. Because they say that the atmosphere is pulled along at 1,000 miles an hour. But if you're going
But you
against it,
no, but you're not moving independent of the Earth and its atmosphere. You're moving in the Earth and its atmosphere. Right? So if you think of a ladybug on a tennis ball, if you spin the tennis ball, the ladybug can walk from one sort of little stripe on the tennis ball to another. And if you spin and then it turns back, well, the ladybug's going to take the same amount of time to go back, right? Because it's moving with everything's moving the same direction, the same way, and in the same context.
Yes, but if it's moving, the wind should be moving 1,000 miles an hour towards you,
No, because the air is moving with the Earth, right?
as far as they say. But we do have.
Well, okay, but here's my question. What's your disproof hypothesis, right? Now, listen, if you guys are able to break through the army of robot penguin guards or something like that that's in the Antarctic and are able to show the edge, or able to go up in some manner and show the edge of the Earth, or able to perform miraculous feats of physical prediction using an electromagnetic theory that doesn't require magnetism and metals, well, that to me would be okay.
Yeah,
You've
man.
blown my mind, and that's really cool. But my question is, what is your disproof? Because it seems to me that there's this belief that this is the case, and then the sun gets changed in size and it gets moved around,
Well,
and stuff gets explained away, and then we discard gravity. Because, of course, if gravity theory works, a flat Earth is kind of impossible because, of course, as you keep walking towards the edge, the gravity well is behind you, and it's like going up a further ramp until you get to the very edge, in which case you're just standing on the edge, and I guess that's close to being what we have now. So tell me how you would know that this thesis or this theory is false. Because if there's no falsifiability,
There are many.
it's got nothing to do with science, right?
Yeah, there are many. We have flight instructors coming out and stating that we all fly over a flat Earth because of gyroscopes. Gyroscopes are devices that are made to withstand all forces, including gravity, to keep level. So using gyroscopes, they keep level.
Of course they keep level, because that's the theory of gravitation.
But
Because they're at a relatively constant altitude over the Earth, and so of course they're going to stay level because everything's pointing towards the center of the Earth, which is the center of gravity.
gyroscopes are made to withstand g-forces, gravity, and everything to keep.
No. Unless they're anti-gravity gyroscopes, you can't. There's nothing that withstands gravity. I mean, a rocket ship doesn't withstand gravity. That's why you need so much candle at the bottom of it.
But they're made to keep upright and withstand all forces.
No, they don't withstand all forces. They overcome those forces. Right? Like, I'm not defying gravity when I climb the stairs. I'm just climbing the stairs. I'm working to get away from gravity, right? I mean, I'm still subject to it. I'm not immune to it. And gyroscopes can't be immune to gravity. And the theory of gravity would say why they would stay level as you fly around the Earth.
They're made to stay upright. So when pilots fly upside down and go all over the place, it stays level. They have an artificial horizon, the rising of the horizon. So when they fly, they keep level. On a globe, flying at 500 miles an hour, you would constantly have to dip down your nose to keep at the same altitude. But what they do is they fly at the horizon. The horizon always rises up to your eye level, no matter how high you go. On a globe, the horizon would always drop down. But on all amateur balloons going up to over 125,000 feet, it shows no curvature. It shows the horizon at eye level and no curvature.
So you still need to tell me how you would know if your theory is false.
How we would know if it's false?
Yes. I mean, you have to admit there's quite a lot of evidence for the sphere, right?
I feel like there is much more for our model at this point.
There's quite a lot of evidence for the sphere. I mean, because you have to wish NASA, you have to have created this. It is obviously a big conspiracy. If this truth must be known to NASA, it must be known to aeronautics engineers, it must be known to engineers, it must be known to like the people who build the big wide suspension bridges where they try to take into account the curvature of the Earth and make the pillars a little bit further apart at the top than at the bottom to take into account that. It must be known to like millions of people around the world.
Yes.
And I would assume that they've let at least some civilian leaders in on this. I assume that people who are creating rockets, intercontinental ballistic missiles, they would all have to know. And then you'd have to have this massive conspiracy, of course, to keep this information from the public, and also to create thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of, not just doctored, but radically created image. And also you'd have to have, because there are satellites floating around the Earth, what would they be, holographs or something like that?
Well,
There is quite a lot of people that you'd have to have in on this conspiracy, none of whom would ever tell the world, and none of whom are benefiting economically from keeping the secret.
it creates jobs, and many people's jobs depend on not learning the truth. But many
So whose
people,
jobs depend on not learning the truth?
like everyone you said, everyone who works on supposed satellites, everyone who works with the curvature. But we have land surveyors, flight instructors, U.S. Navy missile instructors, many
No,
experts
we're talking
coming
about
out.
disproofs at the moment. So are you saying that the fact that because of the curve of the Earth, it was believed that we need what Arthur C. Clarke, I think, this geosynchronous orbit with the communication satellites, that we didn't actually need those because we can send the radio waves or whatever it is straight across the flat Earth. So we didn't
Yes.
actually need those satellites, and they were a hoax in the launching, and the fact that they seem to be flying by overhead, how is that created? Because that's a lot of work. If you don't actually need that, why would you divert money from your weapons programs to create satellites unless there was some value in terms of overcoming the curvature of the Earth?
Well, let me give you an example. The Dew Line was a distant early radar system that was stretched across the
Wait,
Fulton.
wait. Are you not answering my question?
Um, well,
It seems like you're not answering my question.
well,
I don't want an example. I want to know why it was that every government in the world threw up these satellites that were completely unnecessary according to the flat Earth model.
well,
And why can we see them?
there are some theories, like the ISS that they'll tell you comes over. They say that satellites could either just be like already there, already unexplainable things that they just say, oh, those are satellites. Because when you look at the ISS, it doesn't exactly look like a space station. It looks like a self-illuminating light.
A what?
It looks like basically another star. Looks like a light. Like when they say that's a satellite passing over, it just looks like a light in the sky. But if you look at many different supposed satellites going throughout the sky, they'll do very strange things. They'll have very strange movements, things that satellites
I've
don't
never
do.
seen that. I've seen the satellites just slowly cruising above. I've never seen satellites doing anything strange. Again, that's just my particular
Yeah.
observation.
We have
But are
many
you saying the
people
satellites either aren't there, or they're there but they're not satellites? Or what?
on our model, satellites don't exist because they're impossible. Here's something
Well,
from
no, they're not impossible. Look, the moon orbits the Earth in the flat Earth, right? The moon orbits the Earth.
well, I'm saying they're
And
impossible.
wouldn't that be the case with satellites as well, that they could do it as well through some electromagnetic whirlpool thing?
I'm saying that it's impossible because of the technology that they supposedly use. They need actuators, air-driven paramedics, valves, and all kinds of things that would need to be replaced in the supposed heat and coolness of space that they never have to replace. Things that don't exist in our world. Let me read you something from an industrial valve expert who has come out stating that the ISS is impossible. Okay? Think about.
Okay, I'll accept. I'll accept that this guy says that it's impossible. So then, the rockets that are launched to supposedly put the satellites in orbit don't actually go anywhere. Is that right?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, nobody has ever gone into space, and when the rockets launch, you can see that they're not going straight up. They go over. They go straight into the ocean.
They go straight into the ocean. These rockets.
They make missiles. They're a military wing of the government. That's NASA.
Okay. Now, tell me again, what is the hypothesis by which this could be, or the results by which this could be disproved? Now, clearly, if you were able to fly over the Antarctic and then you ended up not going over the edge, clearly that would be a disproof of the thesis, right?
Yeah, there never has been a north or southern circumnavigation.
And all of the satellite photos that show that there's no edge when they photograph the globe and so on, that's all part of an elaborate hoax to create jobs for astronauts?
Well, if you look at the photos, there are many instances where you can see Photoshop, replicate clouds, copy and paste over and over and over. And when you look at ast-
Wait, are you saying that these people who are incredibly intelligent are really terrible at creating their fakes?
I could show you, yeah, it's terrible.
And is that the case with all of them? Because there could be
Yes.
mistakes, right? I mean,
Yes.
because they can't take photographs of the whole planet. They do have to stitch them together. And it certainly is possible when you've got thousands of copy and paste that all need to line up exactly that you could make mistakes and replicate and so on. But are you saying that they're, because the way that if these people are that smart, right? I mean, you can go and see Jurassic Park and see a very realistic looking dinosaur that makes you slowly pee yourself throughout the whole movie. But are you saying these people are very bad at creating these fakes?
They are obviously very bad. They are very bad images because, like in many instances, the size will change. Like the size of the United States will get extremely different in different photos throughout time. It's like it's just totally different. It's like
Okay, so they can keep what would be really the greatest secret in the world. They can keep it. Millions of people, a lot of whom, can you imagine how much money you would make if you broke this story?
yeah,
Like
we are.
I mean, it would be absolutely staggering how much money you could make. Can you imagine how much money religions would make if they broke this story? Because this would be pretty much proof of a deity created universe, right? If there's giant domes and we are the only exception to the spherical model of the universe wherever there's significant mass, and the universe rotates around us, I mean, that's Genesis 101. I mean, you are really, and I'm not even talking like Phil Collins Genesis, like big guy in the sky Genesis. So why wouldn't religions send up probes or drones or balloons or whatever and take pictures of the edge and come back and say, dudes,
Everyone
you've
is.
been lied to.
Everyone is though. Where everyone is
I
starting
haven't
their
seen a picture of the edge. Have you seen a picture of the edge? You
Steph.
just said that you haven't seen the edge.
Steph, everyone's sending up pictures of everyone's sending up balloons to look themselves. Everyone's making GoFundMe's. There's many individual balloons that have gone up. There are no pictures of the
And
edge
they've seen the
because
edge.
you can't see forever. Even
But
from
they haven't seen the edge. That's what you said earlier, right?
yeah, you cannot see forever. It's not like we're launching from near Antarctica. If we did that, that would work. But like in the individually launched rocket that went up 73 miles from Nevada, you could see the moon when it should have been on the other side of the supposed planet.
Well, I can't speak to any of that. But what I can say is that you do seem to have a theory that can't be disproven. Because whenever I talk about standards for disproof, you say, well, they guard the Antarctic and we can't check.
Well,
Or
if you
I don't really have an answer for that. Or there's some guy who says something or whatever, right? But that's not really science, right?
here,
To
here's
say that every time that this thesis could be disproven, there's some barrier to that disproof.
you
Or
can't
you've created an alternate theory of attraction, which is like gravity, but not gravity and so on, which to my knowledge has not been proven. You understand that there's a lot that's not science. Plus, you have to create this universe with the dome, with the Earth at the center of the universe, with the sun 32 miles across, a couple of thousand miles away, and there's lots of challenges around this. You understand that, right?
I understand that this is a very, very hard thing to wrap your mind around. Like I didn't wrap my
No, it's
mind
not.
around it in
No,
45
it's really
minutes.
not. It's really not because it is in the category of false scientifically.
In my mind, there's no experiment to show a curvature. Like you can go up in a balloon and not see a curvature. Like this is
Have
what
you gone up in a balloon? You say you don't see things. Look, are you saying that NASA can fake the entire space mission? And the Russians with Sputnik, and they faked the whole thing.
Yep.
Since the 1950s,
Yep.
it's been completely faked, but no one can fake a picture taken from a balloon and smooth out the curvature. Have you seen it yourself?
They use fisheye lenses, and they had like the Red Bull jump. They have a fisheye lens on it, and the curvature is the same from 25,000 feet.
Have you seen it yourself?
Have I seen what?
Like the lack of curvature,
Yes.
directly with your own eyes in the balloon.
Not in my own eyes, but I have seen
So
many.
then you're looking at other people's photos, but you discount other people's photos for what goes against your theory because you say, well, it's all faked.
Stefan,
But then how do you know that the photos that support your theory aren't subject to the fakery that you ascribe to those that don't support your theory?
Because I know people who are doing this. You could do this yourself. That's what you should do. It's not that expensive. Get like $1,000 or so and send a balloon up 125,000 feet. Do the experiment for yourself and show us. I would love to see you do it.
Have you done it?
My friend Daryl is doing it right now.
Have you done it?
I have not done it myself. We're kind of, underpaid.
You don't have the money to do it.
No.
Right.
But we do have many people who are doing it right now and who are
I have a
like
question
actively
for you,
doing
though, man.
this.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
This is, if you're wrong, this is very costly for you, right? And just because look, if I'm wrong about a voluntary society, or listen, if I'm wrong about being an atheist, oops, hello, lake of fire for eternity.
No,
Right?
come on, man.
Right.
I
So
don't believe in
if
that.
I'm wrong, like I'm conscious of this. Like when I put out stuff in my show, I'm very cautious. Very cautious, right? Like, I mean, I'll say, well, it could be true, and especially when I'm talking about science and stuff, right? Like global warming and stuff like that. I have never said it's false. The hell do I know? I'm just, putting out reasons why I have some skepticism. And so, but if we look at something like religion, man, if I'm wrong, that's like the worst conceivable mistake I've ever made. I don't get to be reunited with my family after death. I don't get to jam with Freddie Mercury on the Infinite Laser Space Beam guitar set. Like I've really, really cucked up bad, right? Now, you understand that if you're wrong about this, then you're crazy. And it's very, very harmful to you socially. And again, this is not proof or disproof. I just want you to be aware of this reality, that if you're wrong about this, right, if there's no dome, if the world is not flat, if all of this stuff is just a bunch of crazy people, then this is doing significant harm to you in your life, right? Because you either got to bite your tongue a lot, or people can look at you like you're just plain nuts, right?
I've been looking at this for 9 months now, and I'm actively telling everyone I know because I have seen all of the evidence that I need, but I am still learning all the time.
No. You cannot discount the photographic evidence of what displeases you and accept the photographic evidence or video evidence of what pleases you. When you say, well, I've looked at the photographic and video evidence and it convinces me, but then you say that all the NASA stuff is faked, this is where you're not thinking clearly. If you have one giant button that says discount all photographic and video evidence, you can't just push it for one side of the equation but not the other. You can't push it and discard everything to do with NASA and everything to do with ancient history and everything to do with people who make globes and everything to do with people who circumnavigate and everything to do with cruise lines and airlines. And you can't say, well, all of that photographic and video evidence is bullshit, but all the stuff which conforms to my theory is valid.
Like you said, the flights only travel through the northern hemisphere because that is the only short route.
No, you're not listening to what I'm saying. You're not listening to what I'm saying.
I am.
What I'm saying is you've not seen this directly yourself, and you discard all of the visual, all of the multimedia evidence for the position you don't like, and you accept it all for the position that you do like.
I only discount things from the governments that are obviously fake. Like, you don't trust the government.
You can't say that every single piece of media that has been produced by NASA and produced by the European Space Agency and produced by the Chinese Space Agency and produced by the Russian Space Agency for the past 60 years, that it is all obviously fake.
Well,
because you haven't reviewed it all.
I have been looking at it.
Oh, come on. You have not reviewed it all. Please don't insult my intelligence.
It's the internet hive mind. Everyone makes compilations. Look at them. When you look at supposed spacewalks, there's bubbles in space because they're in a pool faking it.
Why would they be in a pool faking it? That would be a terrible way to fake it. Why not just go into an airplane like they did when they made the movie with Tom Hanks and Kevin Bacon about Apollo 13?
That's how they fake it.
Oh, because they're bad at it. No. They're bad at faking something that fooled the entirety of mankind for 3,000 years.
Steph, they put this on MSNBC. Like, their training is in a very large pool. And in every single spacewalk...
Oh, Is it possible that somebody has taken a pool training video and said, oh no, this is a real spacewalk?
No, because this is what they put out as real. Chinese and American space
Maybe
agencies.
they misclassified it. Maybe they got the wrong video clip. I mean, there are simpler explanations than the world is flat and the sun is 32 miles across and a few thousand miles away, somehow embedded in a giant dome created by a space goblin.
Well,
There are simpler explanations to
Steph,
what you're talking about. And what about the private space agencies?
like
You say
SpaceX,
you discount the government. What about the private space agencies? They have lots of photos and
they're
videos.
government subcontractors,
Oh, so you can discount them too.
like
So
SpaceX.
everything that doesn't conform, you understand, I'm trying to fight for you here. I'm not trying to fight against you. I'm trying to fight for you. Everything, you have a magic wand which says everything that doesn't accord with your hypothesis, with your preferences, can be waved away.
But
Because you can just say, well, it's faked and there was a bubble. Oh, they're government subcontractors. You can get rid of that. Oh, we can't go past the Antarctic to actually check where the edge is. That's a pretty important thing.
we can because we can calculate where the curvature should be. We have photographic evidence, and I have seen much further than I should be able to see on a
Wait,
globe.
hang on. Photographic evidence?
And like the like
Thought you
I
discounted
live in
those.
California. When you go to the Great Valley, you see much further than you should be able to see on a globe. This is these are things that you can find out for yourself. Like if you go to the CN Tower in Toronto, you can see.
Okay, so hang on. You're saying that when I brought up the example of the ship sailing over the horizon, you said that that was invalid because my eyes were playing tricks on me or something to do with the atmosphere. But when you go to California and you look across a smoggy countryside, somehow it's perfectly valid as a way of figuring out whether you can see far or not. You understand? Your stuff doesn't hang together. And I'm saying this to
No.
you because I hate the cost that this is having for you professionally and personally. You may meet some great woman or guy, I don't care who you're into, could be an alien, I don't know, but you might meet some great woman and then you're going to go off on this flat earth stuff and she's going to take several slow steps backwards. Or she's going to hit you with these kinds of critical questions, which I'm telling you, man, you're not answering very well because they're kind of unanswerable.
No, it is atmospheric density that determines how far away you can see. And by using a telescope or a zoom, you can see further, but you can't see infinitely far. You can see further than you should be able to on a supposed globe.
So what you're saying is that you keep repeating that you can't see infinitely far, right?
Yeah.
The fact that you feel the need to say that tells me that you're not thinking critically. Like if I said to you, well, if I kept repeating to you something like, you can't see through a wall, that would be kind of a weird thing to keep hearing, right? Now saying, well, you can't see infinitely far, I mean, of course you can't see infinitely far. Why would you need to keep repeating that, right? I mean, this tells me that you're kind of stuck in a loop here, right?
Well, it's a
What
hard
is
thing.
you say you're underpaid? What's your job?
What's my job? I work in a warehouse.
You work in a warehouse.
Yeah.
Right. And do you think that the time and energy that you're spending into figuring out the flat earth stuff might potentially, for your own happiness and your own life, be better spent upgrading your skill set to get a job that paid you more?
No, because this is the most important thing. This shows that every government around the world is indeed working together. This is how we stop world war. Do you understand that? Because if we know that every single government around the world is colluding on this, we know that the world stage of world wars are fake. They're playing us off against each other like pawns to kill each other. This
But
is how.
why do you need a flat earth to show, oh, of course all governments collude. I mean, of course they do. Because all governments justify taxation. And all governments justify, almost without exception, fiat currency. And all governments justify national debt. And all governments justify public school education. And all governments justify the capture of intellectuals in academia in order to keep them from advocating any kind of real freedom. All governments agree on borders. All governments agree to a large degree, at least until recently, on immigration and restrictions thereon. So the idea that governments don't all kind of agree deep down, to me, I don't think you need a biodome, flat Earth, 32-mile across sun universe in order to establish that governments collude. I think it seems like an unnecessary complication.
It's not that we need it, it's that we're proving it, Stefan.
But you don't need to prove it because it's already proven. How many governments come out and say, well, taxation is force? Have you ever heard that from governments?
No, but We know.
So we already know they're colluding. I mean, occasionally governments will say, like Barack Obama did say, government is an agency of force or whatever. It's usually a throwaway thing. But for the most part, they all agree, governments all remarkably agree that governments are good and necessary and virtuous and, righteous and all that. So I don't think we need this additional complication of a flat Earth to know that governments collude in general to keep a dominant narrative over the population.
I mean, like it comes back to the nihilism of believing in a spinning globe that could be instantly destroyed by a sun that could blow up or a meteor that could come in and destroy us all. We're safe here. We don't need to worry about that.
We don't need to worry because God would keep... Oh, the dome would keep us safe from asteroids? I guess it didn't in Arizona, or is that crater also fake, made by medieval bulldozers or something?
There's theories on meteors that I don't really have too much of an opinion, but there are many people who think that it could be pieces of the dome.
Oh, and then all the meteorite metals and ores and so on that are shown in museums are all fake, because they'd have to be translucent, right, in order for the sunlight to get through, unless the sun is embedded in it, in which case we'd still need to be able to see through it to get to the stars, unless the stars are below it. See, I'm able to do this kind of gymnastics. But all of that stuff would generally be faked then, right?
I don't know about that. Like, I've never seen one for myself.
Oh, I've seen, well, at least what they say are meteors, and you would say, of course, that they're faked, right? I've also touched a moon rock, but then I guess you would say that's faked too, because they never went to the moon.
They could be any kind of thing. They could be government projects. I don't know. We don't know what they have. We don't know what they do.
And do you think that from your position as a warehouse worker that you will be able to convince enough people of this to radically change your life for the better in a way that, say, not... I mean, you said you've been studying this for 9 months. Just roughly, how much time a week do you spend researching this?
I have no idea, but it's not just me.
Yes, you do. Is it 1 minute a week? No, it's more than that, right?
It's many, many hours. I spend many hours listening to all of the experts who are coming out and stating that it is flat.
You put in thousands of hours into this, and what has the net result been in your life?
We are changing the world one person at a time.
No, in your life.
In my life, I have grown closer to our Creator.
So then for you, this is a religion. It's not science. Oh, I mean,
No.
It's masked as science, but generally it's a religious preference.
It is science. We are proving it in every way imaginable. There is no proof for the globe. There is no proof that it spins. We have Airy's failure. We have trigonometry. We have radar beams. We have no curvature. There is proof, Stefan.
Are you saying there's absolutely no evidence that would support the Earth being curved?
All of what they say as evidence would work perfectly fine on a flat model, which it actually does because it is flat.
And would you say that there are some things that the flat earthers argue for that are also well explained by the globular model, such as the sun being 640,000 kilometers across and 93 million miles away, 640,000 miles across, 93 million miles away? That would explain some aspects of what the 32-mile across, relatively close sun. They both explain some aspects of it, right?
Yeah, I don't deny that it works on their model because they've had 500 years to work out all the kinks. We're just
Actually, a couple of thousand years, but okay. Well, I think we'll obviously, I'm not even going to agree to disagree. I think that this hypothesis is driven by an emotional need for you, and I would imagine that has something to do with your childhood. And you've said as much. I'm not right. You're saying it makes you feel secure. It makes you feel closer to your Creator. It gives you a religious perspective on the world that is of comfort to you. And that doesn't, again, that's not an argument to say that everything that you've said is perfectly false. I'm just saying that it is driven by an emotional need, and therefore it is resistant to empirical evidence. Now, I have no problem being resistant to empirical evidence because we all have to invest in a worldview, and we do all have to, the more we commit to that worldview, the more invested we become in it. And you're 9 months into this, which is why I'm sort of fighting hard to reel you back in a little bit.
Yeah,
and I would say that for you to focus on things in your life that could make your life better, I don't think that the flat Earth is the most important thing, even if it were true, believe it or not. I think that teaching people to treat their children better, teaching people to live with virtue and integrity in their lives according to the standards and principles of virtue and goodness, which are the same whether the world is flat or round.
True.
It's not like if the world is flat, hitting your kids is good or bad,
No.
whether it's relative to whether the world is a sphere. We have work to do in making the world a better place and having people reject the non-aggression principle, which is completely independent of the cosmology of the planet. A murder is a murder, whether the world is flat, round, or banana-shaped. So I think that there's a huge amount to do, which is much less controversial, much more supported by science, and much more acceptable to people as a whole, rather than trying to rewrite everything that they've been told about for thousands of years in their brain, for which you have to admit there is a fair amount of fairly compelling evidence. You can say it's all doctored, but
like what,
it's pretty compelling to the majority of
anything
people.
other than space agencies. Can you prove that it's a globe yourself?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Can you do an experiment to prove that it's a globe yourself? And that
But
it's
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that means. I mean, the number of things that I can prove or disprove by myself is so tiny that if I reject everything that I can't personally validate, then I'm back to like René Descartes thinking that I'm a brain floating in a tank being manipulated by a demon. I think, therefore I am. I mean, I can't possibly reproduce the entirety of human science and medicine. I mean, I've never seen an atom. I've never seen an X-ray. I assume that radiation isn't just tiny pixie demons attacking me with beaks, right? So I would not put as a standard of validation that which I can personally reproduce of the entirety of the human history of the scientific method. Hell, Australia could be a giant hoax. Maybe Crocodile Dundee was just on a big giant set. Maybe it's
Especially-
all the Sydney Opera House and everything. Maybe the Modern Family episode set in Australia was all just on a big giant set with CGI, right? I mean, you can say maybe there's no such thing as spelunking because I've never gone deep into caves. Maybe there's no such thing as really, really high mountains because I never climbed one myself, and maybe there's no such thing as underground rivers, and maybe you know what I mean. Like you can go on and on with the things that you haven't directly and personally experienced yourself.
But we can.
But there is sort of an Occam's razor thing where we can go with that which accords with reality and that which does not require massive and impossible to maintain conspiracies that go on for thousands of years.
But you can prove that the globe is not true.
No, I can't.
You can. If you go to the beach and look at a boat, 16 miles away, it should be beneath the curve.
My
can see a
understanding is
building
that it
60
is.
miles
And
away.
I have actually been at the beach, and I remember when I was in Mexico many years ago, and I was sitting on a beach, and I remembered this thing from medieval science class in college or whatever, and I watched a boat go away, and the hull went away, and then the top of the boat went away, and I'm like, I validated, right? It seems to be curved.
And then when you zoom in, it can still be there from top to bottom. We have this on video over and over.
Right,
This
and none
proves
of your video is doctored, but
Aristotle.
all of the space video is doctored. Anyway, I got to move on to the next caller, but I appreciate you bringing the topic up. It is always fascinating to speak to people who've got a radically different view of the universe and our place within it. I'm afraid I remain, let's just say, squarely in the unconvinced side. But again, I really do appreciate you bringing up the case, and I'm sure that it's a good exercise in critical thinking to take a swing at these different kinds of ideas. So thanks, Stephen. I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, man.